I wasn't going to be last. I'm only last because we decided that Warren and Gav's talks were best delivered sober, and mine was best received after you'd had a few drinks. I'm going to talk about not coding on your own. I'm saying not, like don't. Actually, it's not a command. This doesn't mean anything. I'm sure people cope with it really, really well. I started thinking about what I did and what I've done throughout my career. I spent an awful lot of it on my own. And I've kind of had epiphanies throughout. Kind of theme was about today, all gathering. I was very, very pleased we've started doing this. It's been a slow burner. We've been talking about it for the last 12 months or so, and you know, we actually pulled our fingers out and we've got it organised. People who've come here, you kind of get this message. Being alone isn't about sitting in your bedroom. Being alone is being isolated. It's an isolation, sort of silo type way of working. You may be on your own in a large company. This is about not doing it alone. And by coming here today, by watching it on video, thank you, you're not doing things alone. You are opening yourself up to the community. So this might be sucking eggs again. Okay, we have a few sucking eggs talks today. This is kind of a message, something I picked up. Now, working alone when I did it, it kind of makes you feel like Batman. This is the way you feel, doing everything, being your own boss, yeah, being a go-to guy and filling it. But Batman once, he worked with the Justice League. And when you work with people feel like Batman when he was in the Justice League. Now, if you're a comic book geek, you'll know Batman's time in the Justice Book League all went a bit sour towards the end. Okay, so this is when Batman was in the Justice League. When it was all going well, this is when it was a force for good rather than a force for bad. Now, I was originally going to talk about encouraging community generally. That was my plan. I was going to look back at what I'd done and find out where I'd have been better off had I had more people around me, had I been more sharey and exposing what I was doing. So I look back for some of my history, my old work, things I'd worked on in the past, just in general. I dived on like Wayback Machine, which is scary tool, and I just looked for some old code repositories I found around, and I realised that could I find 5 stories? Could I find 6 stories? I like telling stories, and I tell stories all the time if anyone gives me the chance. So I thought I'm sure I can find 5 stories I can talk about where I made a small decisional error at some level because I was working on my own. And I thought, it's 5, can I do 3, can I do 3? No, I found hundreds, I found the whole thing. I've changed the title of the story. The title of the story is now, my name's Carey Hiles, I'm a bloody idiot. All my career I've been making massive mistakes, and it's only as I've stopped working on my own, as I've stopped being an isolationist, that I've realised how stupid I've been in the past. So my kind of message has changed. My kind of message now is, I'll show you a few things that I least liked, that bothered me most, and if you recognise any single part of those, then this is an encouragement to step away. Now again, you come here tonight. You've come here tonight, and you probably don't need this message because you've made the effort to come here tonight. You may have come here tonight, you may be an Emacs using duck lover who's never going to come back. Because you've been appalled for what's going on. And I hope I stop you making those bad decisions. Okay, so I've worked alone since I started until about 10 years ago, maybe. So, I thought of me. Oh, so, yeah, okay. So even when I worked alone, I tried to bring my son in. This is me working at home many years ago. God, that's a little weight, actually. Pretty good, man. Okay. I'll give you a part of history of me, okay, just so you know, and give some context. Okay, so I've been developing, 2 of them, okay, I've been developing software for about 20 odd years now. Worked in ROM, I worked pre-ROM as well, but mostly ROM based, and then I moved into the web when the ROM market disappeared. 2 at a time. This is a great keyboard. So I'm a non-CS background. I've never been trained. This is all self-taught, guys. Yeah. I worked in teams on my own mostly. I've worked in teams of up to 50 people. I've had these job titles. I think I've probably got a few more actually. But I've been a dev. I've been like head of new media. I've been a head of development. I've been head of software. I've been all these things on my own at some stage. Head of new media on your own. Head of software development when you're the only dude in the company is pretty weird. Okay, so I've done a few of those. Oh, I've made lots of mistakes, yes. I'm quite happy with making lots of mistakes. So now, what do I do now? Well, now I get two bullets on this button. I try and be an advocate now. I try and represent developers. I try and grow community and sharing. Obviously I'm involved in this, but I try and make sure that people are sharing and talking to each other. See, I don't want two at a time. I try and encourage good practice, but I still make mistakes. But my mistakes now are less important. Okay, so now, I'm glad there's no big reveal, because I'd be really cheesed off if like an even number one was a big reveal. Okay, mistakes are okay, and I'm not alone anymore. So everybody sees my mistakes cheaply. I'm happy to be the idiot now. I've become happy to make my mistakes out. So people see them cheaply. So I learn when I say things stupid. People who are listening, they learn when I say things stupid, even if they're staying away and not getting themselves involved. And there's another somewhere. There we are, but once upon a time. See, this is throwback. I've got ahead of myself. I do this a lot. Once upon a time, I was very lonely. But loneliness isn't about being on your own. So if you're a bedroom coder now, or you work freelance or a company of your own, that's one aspect of it. I've been a lone coder in a company, a large company. I've been a lone coder in a smallish company. I've been, what else have I been? No, that's about it. That's all you can be. And you can be part of a community. If you do work in your bedroom, in your pants, you can, all you need is an IRC channel, and you're in a community. That's fine. So it's more about, are you alone, not are you on your own anymore. So if you're the only person somewhere with the required skills to do a job, then that's why I think you're going to be lonely. Lonely sounds bad. No, that's where you're on your own. If you're the only person in your company that can do a particular job, then you are on your own. Simple as. So I thought of 5 things I hate about working alone, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. Now what you're going to do is you will miss and not even know that you're missing things. Feedback is first. The back and forth, tips, techniques, just general testing, eyeballs, you're going to miss all that straight away. And for the first 10 years of my career, at least the first 10 years, I was on my own. It stopped me being any good. I was never a great coder. Because I spent so much time in an isolationist mode. And it cut short my development career. I'm not an old man, but I don't like code anymore. I don't do it because I wasn't good enough. Actually, that's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. But I've stopped. I've curtailed any code because I know that I am not capable of writing code anymore because of the damage I did to myself earlier on. But I still know stuff about it, and I can still work with coders, so that's what I try and do now. So it's not until I started managing coders, and I started building communities myself and developing just good practice and being an advocate and a preacher, that this thing sort of clicked with me, and I became self-aware of what I'd done when I was younger. So, like I said, by coming here, you hopefully recognise that. So, it may be a story or two. If you recognise any of these stories, they're just things that have happened to me. If you recognise any of them, then just I want you to be aware. So, the first one is process. Now, working on your own, there is no process. There is no process of one. No matter how good and tight you think you are, there is no such thing as a process of one. That doesn't happen. But it's quite attractive. The opportunity to build your own process from start to finish. You're getting interferences. You've got a program manager. You've got a project manager. You can deploy without people moaning about ITIL. I don't even understand what ITIL is, but you get all this stuff. Now, I would give back all the freedom I have designing my own systems to rescue that night I spent in Devon in '94 on the phone at 3 AM to a support guy so we could reconfigure some critical process in a server that had gone down. Sorry, a critical server, something had fallen over. It was all in my head, didn't need to document it, because I was the only one capable of deploying it. I was the only one capable in the company of fixing it when it went wrong. So I had a phone call of James. The only photo of James I could find was this one. That's the face he had on while we were talking about 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, it took about 20 goes to get the password over to him, because the password is kind of muscle memories, you know. I mean, I couldn't even tell him without a keyboard in front of me what the password was to get on the system. So it took a few goes, but we got it out there in the end. And we spent about an hour then going through. God, if you try parsing logs over a phone, it's not much fun, okay? So we did that, we played with some config files, we just calibrated up. I haven't dressed as a cowboy today for any, you know, for coincidental reasons. This is how I run my career. So we were kind of like waiting for this morning to come back in. Eventually we got this green light, this text message arrived, let me know the server's back up after about an hour, but I'd spent all this time standing in the field, 3 AM. I'd only gone out to have a cigarette because the SMS arrived telling me the server was down, and it woke me up, and that's when the phone call started. I didn't come back in about 5 o'clock in the morning. So I learned something from that. The first thing I learned to do actually was I resigned from that place. But I resigned, but I also learned then, I started learning about runbooks, and I started learning about what was going on in the sysadmin sphere. I started getting interested in DevOps and automation, and so it kind of, I learned from it, but I lost the night, obviously, like, you know. I learned never to be that guy in the company who can't take a holiday because you're kind of too important to be away for too long because you're the only guy who owns this little piece. Sorry, James, I didn't even embarrass you, but I'm actually going back to process side. So yeah, I learned all that. Now, the rest of holiday was great, by the way. You know, and my son got bit by a duck. So the second thing that bothered me after the process was learning. So I never learned. So one of the things I never learned was what was going on when I found something that worked for me. I stopped because I had no impetus. Now, if you're more motivated than I am, maybe you'd stay on top of it. But this little story comes from, I worked for a TV company. And they were branched out into the web in its infancy. You know, this is when the web was Netscape, but we had Shockwave. Shockwave was our thing. That was interaction on the web in those days. So I was a Shockwave developer. I wasn't a Shockwave developer. This is the place I was head of new media, okay, on my own. Actually, I had a designer, so I wasn't totally alone, but I had no clever boys with me. Now, when I arrived, I'd just written this really, really clever and no false modesty parallax scroller. In those days, it was only me and one other guy from Sony who were releasing director code back to the community. So the Sony guy had written this 3D engine just before 6.5 came out with all the 3D stuff, really clever. But I wrote a parallax scroller and wrote that back out as well. In any case, I was very proud of this, and I used it on every single piece of output I had for 12 months. Every game had this lovely parallax in the background. It was all pretty clever. If you ever played with directors, going back a while, but it was all ink manipulation and quad manipulation and stuff. It was, you know, it was pretty sweet. So this is my thing, and I put it in everything. I put it in menu systems. I use it for everything. I use the same code for like 12 months. If you ever remember, do you not remember director menus, Shockwave menus on websites? Where they sort of like had fades top and bottom, and you could drag them and spin them.
Yeah, some of these guys are from Cardiff Uni.
Yeah. It was bad days. Looking back, it was bad days. So I spent 12 months and I learned absolutely nothing. But I did keep spitting them out. I was quite happy. We were making money of a sort at the time. But it wasn't until a year later that I realised that I learned nothing, and kind of things I was working with was over. People didn't want Shockwave stuff anymore. Flash had taken off. So I had a little look at Flash 1 I think it was, and I didn't get it. It just didn't, the analogy didn't work for me, so I had to pick up something new from it. But what I did learn was not learning for that period of time, resting on my laurels, sitting back, earning money, but not growing. But not knowing I wasn't growing because nobody was telling me. I thought I was great because I was bringing income in. That thing was really important. So that learning tag, if you find yourself not doing that for a period of, well, I did 12 months. I mean, I'm an idiot. I've done that. So, you know, a fortnight maybe, is that reasonable? Learn something every fortnight. Oh, you know, while I was there, this was really funny. Actually, why is this in my ear? Check this out. I found this for the same period, and I thought I'd drop it in, okay? Now, this is probably, right, I know exactly why I wrote this. I wrote this because there was an opposing one to these, and the opposing one didn't have that bang in it there. Why the hell I had not equals false, I don't know, right? But I didn't have that bang in there. And then when I went to check the other way around, it was alright, I just put a bang in the front of that, and the logic's reversed, really marvellous. So I wrote that, I wrote it quite a few years ago, but I keep it as a museum piece. I've got a school of thought, this is called the add a bang if the logic's the one way around school of thought. Just keep adding bangs, it'll work eventually, shouldn't we? Testing, yeah, so we'll be freedom free testing. Now I know about testing, believe me I know about testing. It's done by a company in Brighton. When I worked in London, when I was working in ROM-based media, if you've never actually worked in ROM-based media, it's something as permanent as sending CDs and sticking them in shrink wrap pack. If you've never worked in that field, you don't know what testing is. You might think you know what testing is. Big boys games. Now, all my stuff was done by a company in Brighton. And what we used to do is we used to burn we can call them CDs, well they physically were. They're called worms. If you're old enough, you remember worm. Write once, read many. This was new and shiny and special. So worm burning is what we used to do. Now, if you ever worked across multiple platforms on one disk in those days, it was hard work. So burning a worm was really tough. You'd have to have a Mac, and on the Mac volume, you'd mount your Mac files. The shared files would be on a SCSI-mounted external hard drive. That would be the Windows files. You'd have to have like a FAT16 formatted partition to host things that you wanted at boot time. So your auto run-in would be in there and so on. This was a tricky bit for your Mac one, just before you burned. Oh, sorry. And then you'd have to drag it like toast and stuff. I think we had toast at the time, but then you'd have to hide the DLLs and the XE from the Windows, from the Mac view, and you'd have to hide the Mac binaries from the Windows view. And then there was another special layer for Acorn sort of filtering that sort of virtualized some form of making the Windows version run on Acorn. It was a pain. The CD looked clean for everybody. You had to open the Mac volume, how you wanted the CD burned. Does Mac still do that today? So if you open it on your desktop, the volume, and then burn it, still happen?
What's the CD?
What's the CD? Or the DVD, sorry, okay. The way you look at these choose launches now, sorry, I was trying to find people who are roughly the same age as me. Right? Okay. But that's what you should do, because if you forgot that, it was no good, because that was part of the specifications. So you have to burn. Now, it took like 25 quid a disc maybe, and 2 hours to burn and verify a CD-ROM. So it was quite an expensive mistake if you never got it. Now, I had my code tested by the receptionist. I went to that company, the receptionist tested my code, and then they laid the receptionist off. So for a period, nobody tested my code, apart from the company in Brighton. So, like I say, I've always been a bit wary of testing. Testing's always this sort of negative connotation with me that I think back. I remember how expensive Brighton was, how we used to deliver like a huge wad of paper bug reports that we used to work our way through and then do the whole cycle again by clearing these bugs and sending them back off. So testing has always had this bad thing to me, which is awful because this isn't test. That wasn't test. That was like play testing a game almost. It was nothing like testing code. And it wasn't until I took a gig on that I couldn't do on my own, so I found a friend of a friend who moved into my attic. That was part of the deal. He moved into my attic and we wrote code together for a while. It was a strange setup, but he wrote code he tested. He wrote code that was tested, and this was an alien concept to me because testing was external. It was a third-party agency. But I swear, the summer of Mike, the 3 weeks we spent together writing code in my attic, that's probably the single thing that changed my perspective of what testing is. And now, whilst I'm not the greatest practitioner, I am its biggest advocate, and I do preach about testing quite a lot. So I can't start nailing testing. You know this stuff, people. Come on. Toolage though, now, okay, so inappropriate tools I still do now, and this is the one thing where I like having people around me because I am the biggest user of inappropriate tools there are in the world. But When I was trawling through, I thought, can I find a story about inappropriate tool use in my pack? Oh, I can find a few stories about this, but I found one doozy. So I wrote a director-based application that was networked. Now, if you know anything about director, its networking was poor, piss poor. We had an extra, which was like a plugin, a little extension DLL, that provided some form of communication back and forth, but it was awful. So I wrote a piece of software that was standalone, and then I had to make it networkly distributed. And this was my brilliant idea. All the data we need to pass need to go in an array. If you remember director, arrays were text files, effectively. They were just text files that lived inside the application. But I could write those to disk, and that's what I did. I wrote them to disk and passed them back and forth between machines. That's how we had communication. And I did this for email. I wrote email, private email, using this method. I was passing settings back and forth. I was doing live, semi-live messaging and stuff. It all worked lovely on my machine, and I took it to a client's office. The client's office saw Windows 3.1. It was like standard network, SMB over NetBIOS, all pretty bog standard stuff. But I hadn't thought about setting it up myself and testing it out. Apparently, you can't do that with text files on SMB share over NetBIOS because they don't let you. They do file locking and all sorts of stuff. You put two clients on there, none of them are going to read it. So I set myself up. I've driven all the way to cement works in the middle of nowhere, and was demoing this this inter-office training tool, where effectively, as soon as you find the second client, it would compare a file lock straight away. Now I know how networking works. Now I've studied networking. This is the thing that kicked me up. I've never ever been unprepared to go to a demo anymore. It's the only lesson I learned from this. Was every time I go to a demo, I have tested in the exact same environment. With the virtualization we have now, there's no reason why you can't test in every environment your clients are running on. I live in a dream world where everybody develops in where they're being deployed, and I don't think I'll be far away, which is why I'm a huge Linux user and promoter, and I want all my developers using it, because that's where their code ends up. Finally, have I got praise? Yeah, praise. All criticism, doesn't matter, feedback. That's what it means, doesn't mean anything else. Now, I had sort of praise, yeah, I had praise of my wife and my financial director and my MD and stuff while I was bringing money, and they all told me what a cracking job I was doing, while the income was coming in, everybody was happy. But I don't really respect my wife or my MD or my financial director's opinion on what I was doing for a living. So it was kind of like, if you care about the craft, you know, Gav did a talk today here where you could have banged out version 1. Version 1 did the job, Gav? Any functional changes between version 1 and version 13? None at all. Okay, so you could have burned out version 1, no problem at all, and got paid for it. But I want us all to produce version 13. 13, am I right? Yeah, thank you very much. So, watching Gav refactoring live, very nicely, thank you very much, Gav, shows that there is pride to be taken from you. And yes, you can compare yourself, then ultimately you compare yourself with how completely your code follows Gang of Four's patterns and how how well it passes some links you've run in here. But unless you're getting praise from people, peers, people you respect and so on. So there are, I hope you all get every day. If you don't get every day, someone saying, nice solution, I like it. Or better probably is, oh, that's not going to scale, because you'll learn more from someone telling you, bluntly, you're doing something wrong. You'll learn more from that, the criticism part of it, the constructive criticism part of it, surely, and you will everything else. So if you're feeling where you're not getting talked to, where no one's telling you good, bad things, don't care good or bad or indifferent, make no odds between them. As long as you're getting some feedback, you're doing okay. So I just want to give you something to take away. This was a thought. Right, if you want to learn, and I think you do, because you're here. It's an American saying, aim to be the dumbest guy in the room. It means, they talk about the president being the dumbest guy in the room. So the president surrounds himself with smart people. And the whole point is then, the President of the United States of America is the stupidest person in the Oval Office or whatever it's called. But you should take that somewhere with you. If you're only able to learn off, if you're only able to improve what you do, then find yourself a position where you are, or you feel you are, the stupidest person in the room. Any more in here? Oh yeah, be social and so off. So come here, be social, chat to us. Me, not me, I'm okay. But chat to the smart people and show off. So chuck things in GitHub. Rather than miss out again of this talk you were going to show about all the stuff. Your like RC files are all in GitHub. Go and have a look at them. You can pull them down, you can play with them, you can tear them apart, you can criticise them yourself. So everything you do, expose it in some way, because you'll learn an awful lot more by being seen by people. So my son's grown up now, and he thinks I'm a loser, because this is what, you know, this is his dad now, just standing back and admitting everything he's done wrong in his life. And not life, that's terrible, I've got a great life, what am I talking about? Everything I've done wrong in my career, that's what I've done wrong. There we are, okay. So hopefully, if you recognise any of yourself in there, stop it now. Okay, thanks very much.